This is the 4th of September 1666. You don't have to be that clever to work out that if you build most of your houses out of timber, paint large sections of it with pitch, that's a black sticky material often used during this time to waterproof virtually everything, from boats, ships, shingles on roofs, and of course walls on wooden houses. Then I put thatched roofs on top. Well, what do you think is just waiting to happen if the only main place used to light fires for cooking and for keeping warm was inside your house in a very simple hearth? Often shop and warehouse owners lived behind or just on top of their premises, using fire for much of the day during the course of their business. By the 17th century, the City of London had many large wooden warehouses along the river banks, storing paper, alcohol, tar, pitch, hemp, coal, oil, right next to the poorest of Londoners living in cramped, squalid, tar-papered shacks. Just look behind me and see, thousands are now losing their homes, losing their incomes, losing members of their families. The heat being generated while St Paul's is burning down is so great that rivers of molten lead melting from its roofs are running down the narrow streets, and the stones forming its walls are exploding like grenades. Landowners wanted to build on every bit of their land, so most buildings ended up within a few inches of each other, so that if I leaned out of my bedroom window, I would be in yours. By the way, most of those buildings burning behind me didn't have any internal drainage or internal plumbing, like in your house at the moment. You know, to remove toilet waste, such like. The toilet was just a chamber pot in the corner of the room that just got filled up. Everyone just emptied it out into the street, sometimes without warning to the people below. So, 17th century London, and a great fire was just waiting to happen. During the Great Fire in September 1666, Londoners, victims of their own calamitous circumstances, started to blame everyone else. He has a foreign accent. He must have started the fire. Look, she started the fire. I think she's a Catholic. Let's hang her. Although official records attribute the fire to one location, starting a little after midnight on Sunday the 2nd of September at the premises of Thomas Farriner's, a baker in Pudding Lane, at the end of the day, everybody was to blame. Poverty, poor design, the lack of cheap, non-combustible materials all played their part. And of course the lack of strict control of building work by the officials of the day. In 1661, King Charles II had issued a proclamation forbidding the overhanging of windows and building projections over streets and walkways, but this was largely ignored by the local government. Charles's next, sharper message in 1665 warned of the risk from the narrowness of the streets and authorised both the imprisonment of builders not following his message and the demolition of dangerous buildings. It too had little impact and again was largely ignored. Fires were considered a local problem, and there was no organised fire brigade for the city as a whole. If a fire broke out, buildings around it were pulled down to create a fire break and stop it from spreading. The aldermen of each city wards had to provide buckets, hand squirt pumps and hooks for pulling down buildings. Diarists such as Samuel Pepys and John Evelyn gave very graphical accounts of the events during the Great Fire of London in 1666, which makes very interesting reading. Law and order in the streets broke down, especially at the gates of London's old city walls. The fire raged unchecked. By Monday, the 3rd of September 1666, that actually marked the beginning of any real organised action against the fire. Lord Mayor Bloodworth, who was responsible for the coordination of the firefighting, had apparently scarpered and left the city. In this state of emergency, King Charles overrode the city's authorities and put his brother James, Duke of York, in charge of the operations. James set up command posts around the perimeter of the fire, press gang any men of the lower classes found in the streets, and turned them into teams of well-paid and well-fed firefighters. 3 courtiers were put in charge of each post, with authority from Charles himself to order demolitions. This visible gesture of solidarity from the Crown was intended to cut through the citizens' misgivings about being held financially responsible for pulling down other people's houses. James and his lifeguards rode up and down the streets all Monday, rescuing foreigners from the mob and attempting to keep order. Not long after the dramatic events of 1666, the very first potent proclamations were issued by Parliament, which would lead over the centuries to the current building regulations of the 20th and 21st centuries. Interestingly, it took many years after the Great Fire for effective firefighting teams to come into existence, which would deal with any fires occurring in the cities. King Charles appointed Dr. Christopher Wren, Hugh May and Roger Pratt to join 3 nominees from the city and carry out a survey of the area destroyed in the Great Fire of 1666. The committee was also responsible for helping to draft the Rebuilding Act of 1667. This appointed Robert Hooke, Edward German and Peter Mills as surveyors, and it was they who thereafter oversaw the day-to-day rebuilding and helped to devise the earliest post-1666 building regulation and house types. How much of the overall rebuilding can be attributed to these 6 surveyors, nobody can say now, but the importance of their contribution is clear even today.